We will now move to the 36th District of the Kansas House. Candidates will have 2 minutes to make opening statements, and we'll start with Chiquita Cogs. Chiquita?
Thank you very much. I'd like to first thank all of the persons that have come out tonight to at least give us an opportunity to let you hear something about us so that we can actually, you can get to know a little better who we are and what we do and why we're running for office. I am an original Dot. I was born and raised right here in Wyandotte County. Graduated from Sumner High School, married my high school sweetheart, had 2 children, and they were raised for the most part in Wyandotte County as well. I graduated from Sumner, which I think is a wonderful heritage for me to have here. I am currently working at the Kansas Board of Cosmetology. I am the executive director there, was appointed there by the governor in 2011. Have worked there for this time, and as an agency head, I manage about $1 million a year budget, and I think I can call that successfully at this point. I have an associate's degree from Kansas City, Kansas Community College. I have a bachelor's degree in business administration and a master's degree in industrial organizational psychology, which is what allows me to have a lot of organizational development skills, and I really appreciate that. I am running for office because I think that in all of our lives, those of us who are civically active need and want that opportunity where we can actually step up to the plate and participate in citizen governance. And that's the major reason why I'm running. My passion, however, is in education. I am also the founder of a charter school that was here in Kansas City, and I promised the people, the children, and the parents and the teachers that were at that school that I would continue to work at whatever was needed to make charter schools successful in Kansas. So that's my passion, but I know that I have to deal with all issues that come before the legislature, and I would appreciate your vote.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll turn to Kathy Wolf Moore, who is the incumbent Democratic candidate from the 36th District. Kathy?
Thank you, Merle. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I was elected to the 36th District 8 years ago. Although I'm elected in the 36th District, which is Western Wyandotte County, I feel like I represent all of Wyandotte County. I grew up in Wyandotte County, spent my whole life here, went to grade school, high school, community college right here at KCKCC, then went on to KU to get my bachelor's and master's. I currently work at the University of Kansas Hospital. And in my background, I've spent a lot of time in service to our community, and I worked for Carol Marinovich as her chief of staff for 10 years. I currently serve on the Wyandotte Center Board, the Mental Health Center Board, and mental health and legislation around that issue is probably my biggest passion because we have so much to do in that area. I also was chairman of the board of the Wyandotte Economic Development Council last year and continue on that board. And through all that, I found that my real passion is service to our community. You know, everyone says, find out what you're really passionate about, and that's what does it for me. So I've enjoyed this so much, serving my community. You know, we have a lot to do in Kansas. The last 8 years were not kind to Kansas under the Brownback administration. Things are beginning to turn around, but we've got several main issues that we have to address immediately in this coming year. One of them is we have to finish fixing the school finance plan. We absolutely have to do that. The Supreme Court has mandated, so we must address that right away. The other thing we have to do is we have to do something about the sales tax on food. I hate to tell you that Kansas has the highest sales tax on food in the nation, and so we absolutely have to fix that. And it looks like I'm getting the stop sign, so I'll continue on in my questions, and thank you so much.
Okay. We'll start with the questions with Mary Rupert, and she will start with Kathy.
Thank you. Do you support increased funding to public schools? And if so, how much of an increase would you support? And if you, if so, would you change your answer in the event of a recession?
Well, absolutely, I support public schools. You know what? education is the way out of poverty. That is the lifeline. So absolutely, I support the funding to public schools. What the Supreme Court said is we have to add additional money in, and we have to add at least enough to cover inflation in the coming years to the amount we've already added. So absolutely, in any circumstance, I think I would continue to support fixing the school finance plan.
Chiquita, your response to the same question?
All right, thank you very much. I am not necessarily in favor of throwing more money into the education system. I think that what we need to have as a better question is whether or not we will provide some kind of mechanism for accountability for our schools. We have continually over the past decades thrown more money into the school system, but our student achievement is not necessarily improving relative to the money that we've been throwing at it. I think that we also need to step back to Article 6 of our Kansas Constitution and give it the authority to allocate money and appropriate money for our educational system to the legislature where it appropriately belongs.
The next questions will come from Elnora.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to continue that line of questioning because it's an important subject. And so to maybe get the ball rolling on that, could you tell me what is right or what is wrong, what's right and what's wrong about the voucher system versus just public education the way that it is today?
Can we ask Chiquita to respond first?
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate that question. I think that there are several mechanisms for school choice, one of which is the voucher system. And I believe that those parents who are putting their children in schools, that they should have some sense of accountability, some sense of knowing that their children are going to be educated. And if you're in a low-performing district or in a low-performing school, that your tax dollars are paying into that system, and that your tax dollars or gifts from other businesses or other taxpayers directly into the voucher system would be an excellent way of providing movement for those students so that they can move to a different school if necessary.
Kathy, your response to that question?
Well, I have not supported the voucher system. Now, keep in mind, I've had 3 girls and they all went to Catholic grade schools, but that's a choice I made, and so I feel like that cost is up to me to bear. Additionally, I think it would only do further damage to our public schools. So I really have not voted for and cannot see myself voting for the voucher system at this point.
Now we'll turn to Daniel Silva, and he will ask the next question of Kathy.
Okay, thank you. My question is around partnership. How can the Kansas government be a better partner to the business community?
Well, I actually think in many respects they are a very good partner. I serve on the board of, as you know, Daniel, of the Wyandotte Economic Development Council, and I think in many respects we have been a good partner, but I think it definitely can improve. And I think back to Governor Graves when he was the governor, and it was only because of that excellent, strong partnership that we're able to bring the Speedway, we're able to bring the Legend Shopping Center. So those are the ways that they can be good partners. And one of the best ways they can is with the transportation system. So roads, highways, interstates are just vital to bringing businesses to our communities. So to the extent that the state invests in transportation programs is probably going to determine the amount and the type of businesses that we bring to Wyandotte County. So I think supporting the transportation plan and having them support us in Wyandotte County with projects is probably one of the best ways to do that.
Thank you.
Chiquita, your response to the question?
Thank you very much. I believe that Governor Brownback had a good plan when he reduced taxes, cut taxes for some of our business entities in the state. I think that it was just not appropriately followed through with having spending cuts as well. I think that partnership between government and business has something to do with providing incentives for businesses to come into communities, to work with them in developing job training, job creation. And I think that if we continue to have high taxes for our businesses, it's a deterrent to new businesses coming into our community and into our state. So I think that that's one way that a legislature can successfully partner with businesses in our community.
Our next question will come from Mary Rupert.
Yes, I believe that our state universities have had some cuts recently, in recent years, and I was wondering if you support more funding for higher education.
Kathy, can we,
All right.
well, Chiquita, go ahead.
All right.
Your response.
I'm just having a problem with having a state fund, a general fund, our budget, our revenue stream in the state of Kansas that's overly burdened by all of the requests that we get. I think that until we have some stability in our revenue, that we shouldn't think about increasing taxes on anything or increasing appropriations for anything. If you were in your own home and one of your partners lost a job, you wouldn't start spending more because you had less income. I think that we need to stabilize our revenue before we can think about increasing appropriations for anyone.
Kathy, your response?
Well, I believe strongly in higher education. That's the way up and that's the way out. Now, what's happening because of the cuts to higher education, some kids are getting priced out of getting a college education. And so I believe we absolutely have to support our universities. Additionally, I think what's going on in our high schools and the partnerships between the community colleges and the high schools is just excellent. What's happening is many kids come out of high school with maybe as much as 30 hours of college credit. So, and that's at a much reduced price rate. So when they get to college, they've already eliminated some of that expense that they otherwise would have had. So I'm a big supporter of higher education and the programs that they're doing to try and keep the tuition prices down so that every child has a chance to go to college if they want to, or technical school.
Okay. We'll turn to Elnora, who will ask the next question.
Okay, thank you very much. Demographics show that the largest community would be the aging community, and we expect to see that in Wyandotte County as elsewhere. The question is, with the cuts in Medicaid, and well, with the not having Medicaid expansion at all, and the cuts to other state programs, and the number of seniors growing at such a rapid rate, what measures are being taken or should be taken to address the influx of seniors who will be needing services when the state and most local programs already have a waiting list, decreasing or flat funding streams?
We'll start with Kathy.
Well, that's just a great question, and that's a real issue. And one of the things we did this past year was we put more money into Meals on Wheels, and we put back the money that was stripped out of the Senior Care Act. And now what the Senior Care Act is a program that helps people, especially people, elders on Medicaid, seniors on Medicaid, stay in their homes. That program was cut a couple of years ago, which makes absolutely no sense because it's much more efficient, much cheaper to keep seniors in their home than have them go to some kind of long-term care assisted living. Plus, it's just the right thing to do if people want to stay home. So I think we have to continue to put more money into keeping people in their homes, if that's where they prefer to be, rather than putting the money in the other end when they end up in some kind of assisted living or skilled nursing because they don't have enough services coming to their home.
Okay. Chiquita, your response?
Thank you. I think that we all have to consider that we do have this glut, you might call it, in the senior population. I am one of those baby boomers that's entering into that. I'm not ready to give up yet, though. But I think that we have some very important services. We need to consider our vulnerable populations the most, and that means that we have to focus on the services for them. When we have so many programs in the state, so many agencies that are coming up with new ideas, new programs, and we don't have more money, we just have more programs. And I think that if we focus on those vulnerable populations, focus on getting the money into the services and the programs for them, cut spending in our other areas, that we would have the money to accommodate the seniors and the rest of our vulnerable populations.
Daniel, your question?
Yes, this question is around buy local. We see a lot of entities, like public schools and universities, often bid out contracts in which our local business owners at times will lose by dollars and cents and very small percentages. The Chamber is taking a position in supporting a buy local initiative that will help level that playing field, if you will. Would you support a buy local initiative for the metro area businesses?
I would absolutely support that. I think, again, we can get back to taking care of home first. And I think that if we can't take care of the businesses that we have here, that it's a knock on keeping people in our communities or even attracting new people to our community. So yes, absolutely, as a legislator, I would support any initiative that could be dealt with from a state level.
Kathy, your response?
Thank you, Merle. Yes, whenever school districts purchase lots of services and lots of equipment and lots of materials, and whenever it's possible to do that locally, it benefits the local economy, and hopefully it benefits the school also.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Next question will come from Mary Rupert. Mary?
Thank you. What changes would you support in the Kansas child welfare system, and why would you support them?
We'll start with Chiquita.
As a person that has not dealt in the legislature to this point, and I'm not as familiar with some of the issues that might come before legislators, and as far as child welfare, I know that we have problems. I know that the system is broken. There's been a lot of news breaking on issues that we have with lost children and children dying. So it is an issue that I would have to delve into further to be able to give an educated and substantial answer to. So I am very interested in making sure that that happens, but at this point I cannot successfully answer that question.
Kathy, your response?
Thank you. Well, it's all about caseloads. Right now, so many of the foster care system, we've stripped so much money out of it that we don't have enough social workers. I'm a social worker background, so I understand that. So the social workers are tasked with way too many families to be responsible for, and so that's terrible for the children, terrible for the social worker, and it drives social workers away from wanting to work for the state government. So we have to do a better job of that. There is a foster care task force right now that's really delving into those issues, but one of the things they've discovered is that we've got to fix the caseloads, and we've got to have better oversight because of some of the horrendous things that have happened to some of our children.
Elnora, your next question.
Okay, thank you very much. There are many programs to do many things. And so the first question that I have along that line is, when I look at workforce development and increasing that, educating and giving people an opportunity to make more money, if he or she decides to do that, that's great. Because I feel like that is a good group, that's a moving group, a motivated group, and so forth. But there's also a segment of people who are the hard to employ. And I don't hear programs and services addressing the hard to employ. And I'm not asking if you have the magic wand. It would be great if you do. It would be wonderful. But consider the question, and could you, after consider that, think what would be a program or a direction that we should take in order to address that hard to employ population of people?
Kathy, your response?
Well, that's especially appropriate in Wyandotte County because our unemployment rate is quite a bit higher than the state level of unemployment. So I think we have to do several things. Number one, I think we have to provide real training, and that includes soft skills too, so people know how to get a job, know what to do when they're working at a job. The other thing we have to do is remove some of the barriers. Even if we have the best jobs, there's two main barriers. even if they're trained and they're provided with a job, it's often transit, getting to the job, and the other one is childcare. So what we don't have enough of in Wyandotte County is really good first-class child care that's affordable, and we don't have enough transit. So I believe we have to provide the training and then offer childcare and make transit opportunities available. And if we have a trained workforce, that will attract the communities to come to Wyandotte County, because that's one of the big things they look for. They look for a trained, educated workforce that they can employ.
Okay. Chiquita, your response?
Thank you. I think that's a wonderful opportunity for partnership between government and the private sector. For example, to set up let's just pick a business out of the air, and we'll call it General Motors. And if there was a light industrial area where they could set up a shop to actually create a training facility where you can train for specific jobs in a specific company, so you get the training, and it's something that would provide an opportunity for those who may be unemployed at any given time or in some type of assistance to gain work skills, be paid, at the same time training a workforce to be appropriate to go into any of the businesses that government might be able to partner with to create that.
Okay. Our next question will be from Daniel Silva.
Thank you. Wyandotte County continues to expand and grow, and we're so very pleased with all the growth that's occurred out by the Legends, and using tools such as Star Bonds has really paid off. The amazing development on 39th and Rainbow has transformed that area. What can we do to stimulate the urban core? And I'm talking about downtown Kansas City, Kansas, and those economic corridors like 18th Street and 7th Street. What can we do to help promote and stimulate more economic development there?
Chiquita, your response?
Okay, thank you. I think that we have wonderful opportunities in that we have space available in the eastern part of the county that's underutilized. I think that, again, that partnership, we can work at this point with the federal level. We have those opportunity zones that could be used alongside state opportunities for enterprise zones in a rural, not in a rural, in a non-rural area. I think that inviting businesses to actually start here and start working in this side of the county so that we can balance out the progress that has been made so far on the western half of the county. I think we need that here. We have the land available, we have the businesses available, we can attract new businesses, we have opportunities in funding sources from both the federal and the state level, and I think that that's a wonderful opportunity to take advantage of.
Thank you.
Your response, Kathy?
Well, first of all, I want to say I think we've got a good start on the eastern end, and it feels like the time might finally have come for the eastern end. I mean, just recently announced was the University of Kansas Hospital bought the EPA building, and we're going to be opening that in the next year. A grocery store has been announced. The Strawberry Hill neighborhood is taking off. Young people are moving back in, so I'm hoping that's a real start. Added to that, I think, kind of similar to my previous answer, I think that we have to begin to train the workforce, and if we have a trained workforce, that will indeed attract more businesses to that end of the community. And a follow-up also is the opportunity zones, the federal opportunity zones, and there's certain zip codes that have been designated with them. I think that will be a tool that can make all the difference in the downtown area and the eastern end of the county.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next question will be from Mary Rupert.
Thank you. I'm interested in your opinion about whether there should be any efforts to consolidate school districts, either statewide or locally, or to reduce administrative costs in the schools.
We'll start with Kathy.
Well, you know, consolidation, we're consolidated government here, and so it always, you know, I worked on that back in 1998. So the word has much appeal, but when you talk about consolidating school districts, the problem is when you get out into the western part of the state, so many of those kids we require them to be on a bus for so long to get from one area where they live, if they were in a consolidated school district, so they could end up spending an hour or more on a bus, which is just not the right thing to do. So I think the better answer is to consolidate some of the, which they're beginning to do, consolidate some of the things they do, purchasing of equipment, purchasing of supplies, and doing things more along that line makes much more sense and is not so hard on communities and certainly not so hard on children.
Chiquita?
That's a hard question because I know that we have a lot of areas that are looking at consolidation right now, and a lot of our rural areas especially, and sometimes in the cities, we have school districts that are providing similar services. We have a lot of kind of a top-heavy administration in a lot of our school districts, and I think that that's a bit more of the problem than it is with the school consolidation. If we can keep schools and children in schools close to home, I think that's a good thing. If we lower the cost of administration, I think that's a good thing. We have an administration over the basically across the state that's increasing in costs at a higher rate than students. And there has to be something wrong with that picture, and it's something I would like to learn more about, but I think that cutting administrative costs is much more important than consolidating districts.
Okay. Elnora, your question?
Okay, thank you. Both of you are very capable and accomplished women in the fields that you've chosen to be in. How would you commit? How would you commit the skills that you have and the knowledge that you have to serve those young girls who don't see themselves as being representatives, House representatives, or leaders of departments or anything like that?
Chiquita?
Oh, that was fast. Actually, that's an area that I am very fond of looking into. I recently served on the Kansas African American Affairs Commission, and in that capacity, we looked into mentoring programs for young people. And so it is something that I am very committed to. I believe that there are a lot of young women out there, and I'm separating it because you separated, because there are young men and young women that need those kind of mentoring programs. But I think that there are lots of opportunities for that. There are programs that exist in the state already that can be replicated and service that. I am certainly committed to that. I was someone who was mentored, and it got me where I am today, and I would love to be able to help other young women get that opportunity to mentor someone, and young ladies, young girls, to have someone in that mentorship program.
Okay. Kathy, your response?
Well, I think one of the best things we can do, first of all, is to be a good role model for young women and talk to them. And I've spent time in the schools talking to some of the young women, and sometimes they think when you're at this level and you're a representative of the Kansas House that you were born with a silver spoon or had some unusual opportunities. So sometimes just telling them your story and how you grew up can be very inspiring. Additionally, I think it's really important that I've been real involved in improving mental health in Kansas and with some of the legislation, and I think we really have to expand some of our peer mentoring for mental health patients, because oftentimes, or most with the right medication and the right mentoring and the right leadership, these people can go on to lead wonderful, successful lives, but they just need a person who cares and a mentor.
Thank you. Daniel, your next question?
Yes, my question is around immigration reform. The KCK Chamber supports and encourages a federal resolution to this issue, but it's one that hits home. I would just like to get your thoughts on immigration reform and how you would work with whoever is elected governor here pretty soon.
Okay. Kathy?
Well, thank you, Daniel, for that question. It is a very important question. It's more of a federal issue than it is really a state issue, and I have encouraged and will continue to encourage my congressmen that they have to get this done. You know, in Kansas, especially in the western part of Kansas, that economy, that farm economy, and some of the other industries out there would absolutely collapse without immigrant workers. So it's very important to the state of Kansas, especially in the western, and very important in many other states. So I would continue to encourage our congressman to absolutely get this done once and for all.
Okay. Chiquita, your response?
I think that Kathy's right. We have a huge immigration workforce in this nation, and we also have it in this state. And I think that the immigrant workers are important to the economy of any area in the state. I think that what we have to focus on is making sure that those immigrants that we're working with, that we're doing so from a legal perspective. And I think that's the major problem. We have all of the talk about immigration. My focus would be on legal immigration and setting up a mechanism to make sure that those immigrant workers who would like to remain in this country and become citizens, that they have every opportunity to do so. It can be a burden on our economy if we have people that are not supporting the goals that we have and the finances and the economic system. It can be a drain on our society, but at the same time, if it's being done so legally, then it's certainly a boost to our economy and our community.
Thank you.
Now the candidates will have 1 minute for closing remarks, and we'll start with Chiquita.
Okay, well, again, I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here. I would like to just point out that I am a candidate running on a conservative ticket. I am running to stop the bleeding in spending in our economy. We have to cut spending if we're going to do anything about cutting taxes. I think that we're putting a heck of a burden on our taxpayers when we continue to increase taxes, but it's even worse when we continue the roller coaster that we've seen in the Kansas State House. Those decisions are not made just by the governor. Those decisions are made by the legislature. I would like to be a participant in a legislative body that looks at taxpayers and the burdens on taxpayers as their focus and the impetus for the job that we do. And I would very much appreciate your vote on November 6th.
Kathy?
Well, thank you very much. You know, it's been such an honor to be your legislator over the past years. I truly value the trust you put in me, but with that great honor and that privilege comes a lot of responsibility also. And I have to tell you that I take this job very seriously, and sometimes the decisions just aren't easy we have to make, because there's points on both sides, and you're not always going to agree with me. You just won't. But I do the very best I can. I believe that we have to change the culture of politics, though. I believe in fairness. I believe in being civil. I believe in listening to one another, and I believe in compromising when you have to at times. I absolutely think we have to make sure that the culture that's gone on in Washington, D.C. doesn't reach down to Kansas. I've been honored to be endorsed by the sheriff's group, the police union, the fire union, the teaching groups, the Sierra Club, the hospital association, the labor groups. And I appreciate the trust they've placed in me with their endorsement, and I will commit to continue to doing everything I can to make Wyandotte County a better place to live. And thank you so much.
This concludes this portion of the program. Let's give the candidates a hand.